The Galactic Council met in secret that night, the great chamber hidden beneath layers of metal, shields, and silence, a place where even the strongest empires whispered instead of speaking. Because the meeting was not ordinary, it was forbidden, and every delegate entering the room carried fear like a shadow tied to their spine. They believed they were safe here, in the most secure hall of the galaxy, protected by technology older than some planets, guarded by protocols meant to stop even gods from listening, and yet every representative still spoke in low trembling voices as if even their breath might reveal their betrayal. Humanity. That was the subject no one dared to speak aloud in daylight. That was the name that still caused old generals to stiffen, historians to tremble, and children to whisper at night. The Council had told the galaxy that humans were peaceful, retired, uninterested in politics, uninterested in power, that they had sealed their borders to seek quiet lives. But no one believed that story, not completely, because humans never stepped away unless something far bigger was waiting behind their silence. And every species in the chamber knew that humanity's disappearance had not been an act of weakness but an act of intention. For 9 centuries, humans had remained quiet. No ships, no ambassadors, no messages, no interference. Their star systems were locked by Terran gates that no one could decode. Their planets dark, their stations cold, their territory wrapped in an invisible wall no weapon could break. The Council claimed humans chose peace. The truth was simpler and far more terrifying. The Council feared what might happen if they disturbed them. But tonight, fear itself had become their weapon. Tonight, they wanted control. Total control. The Council speaker stood, their voice trembling despite the authority their position carried, and announced the proposal that had been whispered across back rooms for decades but never dared to be spoken in public. We must place humanity under direct Council supervision. A shudder ran through the chamber like a cold wind sweeping across a graveyard. Delegates exchanged terrified glances. Controlling humans was not just dangerous, it was madness. But the speaker continued, desperate, sweating, shaking. They have been silent too long. Their technology is too advanced. Their absence is too suspicious. We must act before they return. The word return echoed like a curse. Some delegates objected, their voices cracking, reminding the Council of the ancient wars, the ones humanity ended by themselves, the ones that nearly wiped out half the galaxy. Others argued that humanity was gone, extinct, irrelevant. Still others whispered that humans were weak now, that the Council had grown stronger, that the galaxy no longer needed to fear Terrans. Lies. Hopeful lies. The speaker raised a trembling hand. We vote tonight. No records. No transmissions. No witnesses. It was illegal. It was dangerous. It was the kind of vote that could break civilizations. And yet, one by one, lights lit across the chamber. Yes, 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 yes. Each one a betrayal. Each one a step toward something the Council did not truly understand. And the moment the final vote flashed green on the display, something happened that froze every heart in the chamber mid-beat. Every light flickered at once. Every device died. Every screen went black. Every datapad shorted out. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Delegates froze in their seats, terror spreading across their faces like cracks in glass. Nothing in the galaxy had the power to shut down the Council chamber. Nothing except the screens snapped on again, all at once, glowing in cold white light. A symbol appeared. Sharp, ancient, beautiful, terrifying. A Terran sunburst. A symbol the galaxy had not seen in almost 900 years. Gasps broke through the silence. A few delegates choked. One fainted. Every heartbeat in the chamber became a trembling drum. The symbol pulsed, slow and steady, like something alive. Then the room temperature dropped as if the very air was holding its breath. Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Slow, calm, heavy, confident. The kind of footsteps that did not belong to prey. The kind of footsteps that belonged to something returning after waiting patiently for centuries. The doors of the chamber, doors that could withstand planet-killer weapons, unlocked themselves with a soft click. Delegates scrambled back in horror. Some tried to run. Some hid behind seats. Some simply froze, unable to move. The doors opened, and the galaxy's greatest nightmare stepped inside. 3 humans walked into the council chamber. Not soldiers, not warriors, not armored machines. Just humans. Their presence made the air vibrate with a pressure the council had forgotten, a reminder of something ancient. Humans did not need armies to be dangerous. They themselves were enough. The first human stepped forward, dressed in a simple dark uniform without rank or medals, yet he carried an aura that felt like a storm hiding behind a calm sky. His eyes scanned the chamber slowly, not unkind, not angry, just disappointed. A disappointment deeper than rage. The second human placed a device on the table. It lit the entire chamber in a soft blue glow. The delegates felt something inside them tremble. It wasn't fear. It was recognition. Ancient recognition. This was Terran technology. Technology so advanced the galaxy had spent centuries trying and failing to copy it. The third human finally spoke, his voice quiet, almost gentle, but carrying the force of a hammer striking the universe. So, he said softly, you voted to control us. The council speaker collapsed into his chair. Another representative whimpered. A third whispered, we thought you were gone. The human tilted his head slightly. Gone. His voice held no anger, no cruelty, only amusement. We were listening. A cold wave passed through the room. Another human stepped forward. We heard everything, she said softly. Every whisper, every secret meeting, every vote. Silence crushed the chamber. And, she added, we are disappointed. Delegates trembled. Some began to cry. No one dared speak. The first human looked at the council with eyes that had seen more than the chamber could imagine. You thought we were silent because we were weak. His voice softened even more. We were silent because we were busy. Busy doing what? Busy preparing for what? No one dared ask. The third human placed a hand on the table, and instantly the room lit with thousands of holograms. Maps, charts, files, recordings, all of them displaying council operations the representatives believed were perfectly hidden. You block us from your systems, the human said, but your systems do not block us. His voice carried no effort. It was simply fact. The holograms shifted, showing the vote result, every delegate's name beside their choice. Direct supervision over humanity, the human read aloud. The words echoed like thunder. Control over our colonies, our ships, our research, our people. The holograms vanished. Only the Terran sunburst remained. You made this vote in fear, the human continued, but you forgot something. The council trembled, waiting for the storm. The Terran leaned forward, his voice dropping into a whisper that hit harder than any weapon ever created. You cannot control what protects you. Silence swallowed the room. No one breathed. No one dared move. And then, without raising a weapon, without raising their voices, without showing anger, the humans delivered the sentence that shattered every soul in the chamber. We are not here to negotiate. The sunburst symbol brightened. We are here to correct your mistake. And in that moment, with humans standing inside the council chamber for the first time in 9 centuries, the galaxy realized the terrible truth. Humanity had never stepped away from power. Humanity had simply been waiting for the council to misstep, and tonight, the council finally had. The chamber felt smaller now, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, as if the air had thickened under the weight of humanity's presence, and every delegate sat frozen, unable to look away from the 3 Terrans standing at the center of the room with calm eyes that saw far more than the council ever intended to reveal, and the silence that followed their arrival pressed on every chest like gravity itself had doubled, making it difficult to breathe, to think, to even exist under the crushing realization that humanity had known everything from the start. The speaker finally tried to speak, his voice trembling so badly it barely rose above a whisper. HFY, how long have you been listening? And the first human lifted his gaze ever so slightly, not with anger but with a tired patience that felt older than any species in the room. A patience that said they had endured centuries of betrayal and pretended not to notice. Long enough, the human replied softly, and those 2 simple words hit harder than any shouted threat, because they carried centuries of watching, centuries of restraint, centuries of quiet understanding of what the galaxy had become in their silence. Another delegate, shaking violently, tried to stand, his legs barely supporting him as he stammered. "We were afraid you would, but he could not finish, and the human finished for him. Return to the table we built for you," he said, voice low and steady. "A table you took from us the moment we stepped away." A few delegates flinched as if struck. The humans were not here to reclaim power. They were here to reveal that they never lost it. The second Terran stepped closer, her footsteps soft but every movement radiating an authority so natural it felt like gravity bending around her. "We watched your wars," she said quietly. "We watched your treaties. We watched your lies." The delegates shrank back, some gripping their armrests so tightly their claws or fingers dug into the material. "We watched you promise peace while building weapons in the dark," she added. "We watched you use fear of us as a tool for control." Screens beside her flickered, showing footage, real footage, of secret council weapons programs, manipulation of smaller species, hidden experiments, resource theft, all the things the council buried under lies of unity and progress. Gasps filled the room. Some delegates tried to deny it, others broke down, others stared at the floor in shame. Humanity remained silent. The third Terran said, voice softer now, almost sad, "Not because we trusted you, but because we hoped you would prove worthy of the galaxy we bled to build." That line shattered what remained of the chamber's pride. The humans looked around the room, not with rage, not with superiority, but with disappointment so deep that even the bravest species lowered their heads. The speaker's voice cracked as he whispered, "Why didn't you speak? Why didn't you warn us that you were still watching?" The lead human gave a faint, hollow smile. "Because you were not ready to hear us." His words sank into the room like a truth too heavy to hold. Another delegate, voice trembling, asked, "Then why appear now? Why break the silence tonight?" And the human stepped forward, placing his hand gently on the council table, the same table where the vote to control humanity had been cast, and the lights flickered again, not malfunctioning but responding, as if the room itself recognized him. "Because tonight," he whispered, "you crossed a line even we cannot ignore." A deep hum echoed through the floor. Outside the chamber, something massive shifted, shaking the air with a presence so powerful every delegate felt their bones vibrate. The screens activated, showing the silhouette of a Terran ship descending through the atmosphere above the capital. Not attacking, not firing, just arriving. A shadow of unimaginable scale, silent and effortless. Gasps erupted as its shape became clear, sleek, dark, impossibly huge, moving like a creature that swallowed light and gave back only silence. "Your vote," the human said softly, "was not made from wisdom. It was made from fear." He looked around the room, his eyes shimmering with a quiet kind of sadness that hurt more than anger ever could. "And fear," he added, "is a dangerous ruler." Outside, the Terran ship rotated slowly, revealing glowing blue lines across its hull. Alive, ancient, powerful. Its presence was not threatening. It was warning. "For 9 centuries, the second human whispered, we protected you from dangers you never knew existed." The council froze. What dangers? What threats? How? Why? But the humans didn't explain. Not yet. "Tonight," the first human continued, "you tried to put chains on the only hands that have ever protected this galaxy without asking for anything in return." The words stabbed deeper than any blade. Delegates shook their heads, some crying, some silently begging forgiveness, others too ashamed to look up. "Tell us," one representative whispered, voice breaking, "tell us what you want from us." The humans looked at one another, quietly, calmly, with the kind of understanding that came from centuries of shared burden. Then the lead Terran spoke, and his words cut through the chamber like a cold wind rising from the void. "We want truth." The room froze. "We want accountability." Silence. "And we want you to remember something you forgot a long time ago." Every delegate leaned forward, terrified, shaking, desperate. The human lowered his voice until it felt like a whisper pressed against every ear in the galaxy. "Humanity does not belong under your control." His eyes hardened. "Humanity is the reason this council still exists." The room collapsed into stunned silence as the Terran sunburst pulsed behind him. The human stepped back, allowing the weight of his words to settle deep into the bones of every terrified leader. And then he delivered the softest, most devastating sentence of the night. You cannot control us, because every time you feared the darkness, it was us who held it back. The chamber went silent, cold, breathless, because for the first time in 900 years, the galaxy understood what humanity truly was. The chamber felt like it was holding its final breath as the truth hung over the delegates like a storm cloud ready to burst, and while the humans stood silent at the center, their calm presence pressing down on the room heavier than any weapon, the council members felt an emotion they had not felt in centuries. Shame, real and suffocating, sinking into their bones as they realized how deeply they had underestimated the very species that once shielded the galaxy from annihilation. Several delegates tried to speak, but their voices came out as broken whispers, drowned by the weight of humanity's words, and when the Terran sunburst flickered across the room again, every representative felt it. Not a threat, not a warning, but a reminder of something ancient they had forgotten. Humans were not just a species, they were a force that shaped the galaxy and then stepped away not because they were defeated, but because they were tired, hurt, watching from the shadows to see if the galaxy they bled for could stand on its own. The silence stretched until it became unbearable, until it felt like time itself refused to move, and finally one of the elder delegates, a species older than most stars, stood with trembling limbs and whispered, "If you were watching us all this time, why didn't you stop us before we made this mistake?" The lead human turned his gaze toward the trembling elder, and the chamber felt the temperature drop as centuries of restrained pain flickered behind his eyes. Because every species deserves the chance to choose who they become, he said softly, even if that choice leads them down the wrong path. His voice cracked, not from weakness but from old wounds reopening. We learned long ago that forcing peace only creates deeper wars. Murmurs rippled through the chamber, some filled with guilt, others with fear, but all united by a single dawning realization. The humans standing before them were not angry conquerors. They were guardians who had grown weary of carrying the galaxy's weight alone. Another delegate rose, hands shaking so violently she struggled to keep her voice steady. What darkness did you hold back? What dangers did we never see?" she asked, her eyes wide with both fear and curiosity. The humans exchanged a glance, a silent, heavy exchange that carried the memories of battles fought in places the Council had no names for, battles that left scars across entire realities. "Dangers you cannot imagine," the second Terran said quietly. "Threats that would have broken your worlds in days." She closed her eyes for a moment, as though remembering screams carried by dying stars. "We bled for a galaxy that never knew how close it came to ending." A few delegates covered their mouths as tears streamed down their faces. The guilt was suffocating. The horror of their ignorance crushed them. But the humans did not stop. They stepped deeper into the truth. 900 years ago, the third Terran whispered, "We found something at the edge of the void. Something ancient. Something that woke when the universe was still young." The screens flickered again, not by command, but by proximity to Terran technology responding to memory, and images flashed across the chamber. Starfields twisted into spirals, entire fleets vaporized with a single pulse, monstrous silhouettes devouring space itself. Gasps, screams, and trembling filled the room. "While you built trade routes and debated taxes," the Terran said softly, "we were fighting for all of you." The chamber broke. Representatives dropped to their knees. Others sobbed openly. Some whispered prayers in languages older than the Council. Humanity's silence hadn't been selfish, it had been sacrificial. The speaker could no longer contain the torment in his voice as he stammered. "Why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you ask for help?" The first Terran lowered his gaze, his expression shadowed by centuries of loneliness. "Because we asked once," he said, "and no one came." The admission hit the chamber like a physical blow. Delegates collapsed into their seats, understanding for the first time the crushing burden humanity had carried alone. The Terran commander's voice grew softer, filled with a sorrow that echoed through the chamber like a dying star. "Do you know what it feels like," he whispered, "to watch your worlds burn while the galaxy looks away?" The silence that followed was deeper than emptiness. It was guilt. It was realization. It was the recognition of a mistake so vast it shook the foundation of the council itself. We stepped away, the human continued, because we had lost faith in the galaxy's unity. He looked up again, and this time his eyes burned, not with anger, but with the ache of a wound carried for nearly a millennium. But tonight, he said, your vote showed us something worse. A chill swept across the chamber. Delegates held their breath. You were not afraid of our power, the Terran said. You were afraid of our silence. The words cut deeper than any blade. The humans stepped forward, and the room recoiled, not because the humans threatened them, but because the truth hanging in the air forced every representative to face their deepest fear. They had tried to chain their shield, break their protector, weaken the one species that had never once used their strength to rule over them. Your mistake, the human whispered, was believing silence meant weakness. The lights flickered. The Terran sunburst pulsed brighter. Silence, he continued, meant restraint. The chamber froze, terrified beyond measure. And restraint, the Terran said, is the one thing you should pray we never lose. The humans stepped back from the table. Delegates leaned back as if the very air around humanity pushed them away with invisible force. The first Terran let out a slow, heavy breath. This meeting is not about punishment, he said softly. This meeting is about truth. His eyes scanned the room once more. And the truth is this, the room braced itself. You cannot control humanity. His voice deepened. Because without humanity, the screens behind him showed flashes of ancient horrors awakening in distant corners of the galaxy. You would not survive what comes next. And in that moment, the Council understood the full weight of their mistake. They had tried to place chains on the only species that kept the darkness away. The chamber felt like it was sinking into a deeper silence than space itself, as if the universe were holding its breath to hear what humanity would say next, and the delegates, once proud, once arrogant, now sat smaller than children, their faces pale, their hearts trembling, their minds struggling to understand how close they had come to, provoking a force they never truly understood, and the humans, standing calm and steady in the center, seemed almost like ghosts of a forgotten age, ancient, wounded, powerful beyond measure, yet carrying a sadness so heavy it bent the air around them. The screens behind them flickered again, showing one last echo of the threats humanity had fought in the dark. Swirling shadows with no shape, star-eaters drifting through cosmic storms, creatures made of living void, horrors no sane species would believe existed, yet the Terrans had stood between them and the galaxy, fighting battles no one ever saw, bleeding in places no one dared explore, protecting a galaxy that didn't even know it needed saving. And as those images faded, the humans dimmed them with a gesture, as if they were memories too painful to look at for long. The council speaker's throat burned as he whispered, "Why didn't you let us help? Why did you carry this alone?" And the lead human's eyes softened, not with pity, but with the sorrow of someone who had waited far too long for that question. "Because help must come from courage," he said, "not fear. And 900 years ago, the galaxy chose fear." His voice echoed through the hall, vibrating inside every bone. "You feared us more than the monsters at the edge of the void. So you turned your backs when we needed you most." Several delegates wept openly now, tears streaking down their faces as guilt swallowed them whole. The oldest representative, a being made of shimmering silver light, spoke in a shaky whisper, "We were wrong. We were blind. We believed you had abandoned us." The human shook his head. "We never abandoned anyone," he said quietly. "We simply learned the cost of standing alone." Another human stepped forward, her voice softer, filled with warmth that shattered the cold tension in the room. "Do you know how difficult it was to watch entire civilizations grow," she whispered, "and stay silent when they made mistakes we once made?" Her eyes glimmered with ancient pain. "Do you know what it feels like to want to guide, but not intervene? To watch you step into traps we knew were coming? To watch you build weapons that would never protect you from what truly hunts in the dark?" The chamber shook with a quiet, collective sob. Because they understood. They understood now. Humanity had not watched in arrogance. They watched in grief. "We didn't interfere," she continued, because a future forced by us would not be yours. And you deserve the chance to grow on your own. Those words struck harder than any threat the council had ever feared. But the moment lasted only seconds before the third Terran stepped closer, his expression sharp with the disappointment of someone who had carried hope for far too long. But instead of growing wiser, he said, "You grew comfortable." His voice darkened. "You believed peace existed because you built it." He shook his head. "Peace existed because we held the enemies at the door." The delegates bowed their heads in shame. "And when you grew afraid again," he continued, "you turned your fear toward us." The council speaker whimpered, "We didn't know. We didn't understand." The Terran leaned forward, voice a calm blade. "You didn't try to understand." A soft thud echoed through the chamber. The speaker had fallen to his knees, shaking uncontrollably. One human knelt beside him, not cruelly, not triumphantly, but with a strange kindness that tore at the speaker's heart. "We are not your enemy," the human said gently. "We never were." The speaker sobbed, clutching at the floor. "We tried to bind the only shield we ever had." The human nodded slowly. "Fear blinds even the wise," he whispered. "But fear does not excuse betrayal." A cold truth. A heavy truth. A truth that made several delegates flinch as though struck. The Terran stood again, addressing the entire chamber. "Your vote tonight was not just an insult," he said. "It was a signal." The room froze. A signal to those watching at the edge of the void, he continued, that the galaxy no longer trusts its protector. His eyes narrowed. "And when predators smell weakness, they come." The chamber grew colder, the lights flickering faintly as reality itself seemed to acknowledge the warning. "You did not only endanger humanity," the Terran whispered. "You endangered yourselves." A long, suffocating silence followed. Then the Terran sunburst expanded behind the humans, glowing with a soft, golden warmth. "But we came," the lead human said, "because despite everything, we still believe this galaxy is worth saving." One sentence. One mercy. And it broke the room apart. Delegates sobbed into their hands. Some whispered apologies in trembling voices. Others fell from their chairs, overwhelmed by guilt and relief. But the humans were not done. The lead Terran raised his hand, and the chamber screens shifted again, not to threats, not to danger, but to something far more terrifying. Recordings of council officials voting in secret to take over Terran colonies, seize Terran research, disarm Terran fleets, and monitor Terran citizens. Every delegate felt their chest tighten as the truth unfolded. Humanity saw everything. Humanity knew everything. Humanity could have destroyed the council in seconds, but didn't. "We are not here to punish you," the first Terran said. "If we wanted to punish you, this building would already be dust." His calm tone made several representatives faint. "We are here," he continued, "because you forgot the truth that once united this galaxy." The sunburst flared. "You fear our strength," he whispered, "but you survive because of it." His voice dropped into something quiet, emotional, almost breaking. "You fear our silence, but our silence is what kept you alive." The chamber dimmed. Hearts pounded. Tears fell. The Terran stepped forward, his final words hitting the room like a star collapsing. "We did not come tonight to ask for your trust." The lights flickered. "We came to remind you why you were able to build a galaxy worth trusting in the first place." The sunburst dimmed. Silence swallowed the chamber, because now the council understood the one truth they were never meant to forget. Humanity did not walk into the chamber to reclaim power. Humanity walked in to reclaim responsibility. The chamber trembled under the weight of truth as the humans stood in the center like silent storms waiting for the galaxy to finally understand what it had ignored for almost 1,000 years, and the delegates, once confident rulers of dozens of worlds, now felt like their entire reality was collapsing piece by piece. For every word the Terrans spoke peeled away illusions the council had wrapped around itself to feel safe. Illusions that now shattered like thin glass under the pressure of humanity's calm and unbearable honesty. And as the heavy silence stretched on, the speaker forced himself to stand, though his legs shook so violently he nearly collapsed again, and he whispered through clenched teeth, "If we endangered the galaxy, if we endangered you, then tell us, Please, tell us what we must do. But the lead human did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked around the room, his gaze slow and heavy, as though he saw through every delegate, through every facade, through every attempt to appear brave or wise or powerful. And for a long moment he said nothing, letting the fear, the guilt, the trembling realization sink deeper into every soul in the chamber. And when he finally did speak, his voice was soft, almost gentle, but filled with an authority that made the walls seem to bend toward him. You must first understand what you tried to control, he said quietly, and before anyone could respond, the chamber lights dimmed again, not because of malfunction, but because something outside was casting a shadow so massive, so silent, so impossibly colossal that it turned the atmosphere inside the council building cold as winter. The delegates looked up in confusion and terror, and the screens showed it. An enormous Terran vessel descending from orbit, not the ship they had seen earlier, but something far older, far more powerful, a dark, glimmering silhouette that looked less like a machine and more like a slumbering titan awakening after centuries beneath the stars. Gasps, cries, and whispers filled the room as the ship hovered above the city without making a single sound, its glowing blue lines pulsing like the heartbeat of an ancient creature. This, the human whispered, is what you attempted to chain. The chamber erupted into stunned silence. Even the bravest delegates trembled. This ship fought in wars you have never heard of, the human continued. It survived battles that nearly killed us. His voice softened, but the pain behind it felt like a wound carved into time itself. We lost millions to keep the galaxy safe. We lost worlds. We lost children. The chamber fell still. Delegates lowered their heads. Some cried openly. Others shook uncontrollably. And still, the Terran added, we never asked the Council for anything. Not a single credit. Not a single supply convoy. Not a single ship. The galaxy had floated comfortably in peace while humanity bled for them. Quietly, invisibly, deliberately. We protected you without asking for gratitude, he said, but we never expected betrayal. A wave of shame crashed over the room. The speaker bowed deeply, his voice cracking. We did not understand the truth. We did not understand the cost you carried. The human's expression softened, not with forgiveness yet, but with a sorrowful patience. You did not want to understand, he replied. His words stabbed deeper than anger ever could. Another delegate forced herself to stand, wiping tears from her face, voice trembling as she spoke. Then tell us, she said, what comes next? Do you dissolve the council? Take control? Punish us? Some delegates turned pale, terrified of the answer. Others closed their eyes in acceptance, knowing they deserved whatever the Terrans decided. But the human shook his head slowly. We are not here to rule, he said. We are not here to destroy. A breath of relief went through the room, but he wasn't finished. But we will not allow this mistake to happen again. The chamber froze. You will not control our colonies. You will not access our systems. You will not monitor our people. His voice hardened, the softness vanishing like sunlight fading behind a storm. And you will never again hold a secret vote about humanity. The speaker nodded desperately, bowing his head. Yes, of course. We agree. This is not an agreement, the human said. This is a fact. Several representatives swallowed hard, nodding quickly. The Terran continued, what you attempted tonight was dangerous because it sent a message to the universe. The screens lit up behind him showing distant galaxies, black storms, cosmic rifts trembling at the edges of reality. It told the predators watching that the galaxy is weak and divided. The temperature dropped further. And when predators sense weakness, his eyes darkened. They begin to move. A cold shock rippled through the chamber. The humans stepped forward as one, their shadows stretching across the council floor like long, ancient warnings. You think humanity frightens the galaxy, the Terran whispered. But you have forgotten the beings that frighten us. The chamber walls creaked as if reality itself reacted to those words. Those creatures at the edge of the void have waited for this moment, he said. And your vote tonight told them the shield guarding this galaxy is cracked. Some delegates whimpered. Others covered their mouths. Some fell into their seats, trembling in terror. The humans lowered their heads slightly, as if acknowledging an old, familiar enemy returning. "They will come," the humans said softly. "Soon." The room froze. Not a whisper. Not a breath. Nothing. Only fear. "But," he added, "we came here tonight because we do not want your fear to destroy what little unity remains." The faintest warmth returned to his tone. "We will protect you. We always have." Relief washed through the room, until the human delivered the final line, a line that shook every soul to its core. "But if you ever betray us again," his eyes hardened into something ancient and terrifying, "we will walk away." The screens flickered black. The chamber dimmed. The Terran ship above the city hummed like a sleeping god. "And if humanity walks away," he whispered, "the galaxy will not survive what follows." And just like that, with one endless, breathless moment, every delegate understood that the galaxy did not fear humanity's power. They feared losing humanity's protection. The chamber seemed to shrink even further as the humans' final warning echoed through the minds of every trembling delegate, wrapping itself around their thoughts like an icy hand they could not pull away from, and for several long moments, no one dared to move, no one dared to breathe, no one dared to interrupt the suffocating silence that had settled over the room like a shroud. It was as if the entire council building, the entire city, the entire planet had frozen beneath the weight of a truth they were never meant to face. The truth that humanity's presence had been the difference between survival and extinction for centuries, and the possibility of losing that presence felt like standing on the edge of a cliff with nothing but endless darkness below. The speaker wiped tears from his trembling face, his voice breaking as he whispered, "We did not know, we did not see." And the human closest to him took a slow breath, not out of anger, not out of superiority, but out of a deep, exhausted grief that came from centuries of carrying a burden too heavy for any one species to shoulder alone. "We never wanted you to see," the Terran replied softly, "because the truth would have broken your spirit long before tonight." His eyes lifted to the ceiling as if remembering a battlefield no one else had survived. "We hid the horrors because we believed the galaxy deserved hope." Those words crushed the council. The idea that humanity had chosen silence not to manipulate, not to dominate, but to protect them from despair was a wound deeper than any punishment they could have received. One of the younger delegates, voice shaking, whispered, "If you protected us from dangers so terrible, what will happen when they come again?" The human turned toward him, and his expression softened, not with pity, but with the bittersweet tenderness of someone who had spent centuries preparing for a war no one else believed in. "They will come," he said quietly. "They always come." His voice grew distant, haunted. "They never stop." The screens flickered again, showing shadows moving in hyperspace, unseen ripples forming at the galaxy's edge, dark storms twisting like living nightmares. "And when they arrive," the human continued, "they will not ask who voted against us. They will not care who feared us. They will only see one thing, the lights dimmed. That humanity is tired." The words hit the room like a dying star collapsing on itself. Delegates looked up in shock, some stepping back, others shaking their heads violently as if refusing to believe what they had just heard. "Tired?" One delegate choked. "Tired of what?" The human closed his eyes for a long, painful moment. "Of fighting alone," he whispered. "Of bleeding in the dark. Of burying our children on worlds no map has ever shown you." A painful silence strangled the room. "Of watching the galaxy celebrate peace," he added softly, "when we were the ones paying its price." The council fell apart at those words. Some delegates fell to their knees, others wept openly, others trembled with their hands covering their mouths. Humanity's silence had never been abandonment, it had been sacrifice. The third human stepped forward, his voice quiet but firm. "We didn't walk away because we stopped caring. We walked away because we no longer knew if the galaxy deserved what we sacrificed for it." A delegate broke down completely, sobbing into his hands. "We failed you," he whispered. "We all failed you." The human did not deny it. Instead, he walked slowly toward the center of the room, the Terran sunburst glowing behind him like an echo of a forgotten age of heroes. "Tonight," he said, "your vote reminded us of the truth we feared. He paused. You do not fear the darkness outside your borders. You fear the light that stands between you and that darkness. His meaning was clear. They feared humanity more than the nightmares humanity fought. The speaker bowed until his forehead touched the floor, voice shaking with guilt. We cannot undo our mistake, he cried. But tell us, what can we do to fix it? The lead human looked at him with a mixture of sorrow and ancient fatigue. You cannot fix what is broken, he said slowly. But you can stop breaking it further. Another chill swept across the room. The Terran lifted his hand, and the screens behind him shifted to show something new. Terran ships, not warships, but medships, rescue fleets, supply carriers, arriving at suffering worlds across the galaxy, helping species who never even knew humans were nearby. Delegates gasped as they saw their own planets being aided in secret. We healed your worlds, the Terran said gently. We saved your children. We protected your borders. And we never asked for thanks. The chamber erupted in tears. Even the strongest leaders trembled. The human continued, voice soft but unyielding. We did it because we believed this galaxy was worth saving. He paused, letting the weight linger. Do not make us believe otherwise. Then the youngest of the three humans stepped forward, her expression gentle but firm, her voice carrying the quiet strength of someone who had lived through horrors no council leader could imagine. We are here not just to warn you, she said, but to ask something from you for the first time in 900 years. The room froze. Delegates looked up with wide, terrified eyes. We ask, she whispered, that you stand with us. Not fear them. Not chain them. Stand with them. A single tear ran down the speaker's face. We will, he whispered. We swear it. The human nodded slowly. Then remember this, he said. Unity will not be built from fear of humanity. His voice deepened, vibrating through the air. Unity will be built from trusting humanity. The Terran's sunburst glowed brighter behind them, warm instead of cold, protective instead of threatening. Because when the darkness returns, the human said, stepping back, we will fight again. He paused, his voice breaking ever so slightly. But this time, we refuse to fight alone. And in that moment, the entire galaxy finally understood what humanity truly wanted. The chamber felt different now, not lighter, not safer, but heavier with the weight of a truth the galaxy had ignored for centuries. And as the humans stood there, silent and steady, the Council finally understood that humanity's strength was not in their ships or weapons or ancient technology, but in the unbearable burden they carried alone for generations. And that realization made the air inside the hall thicken until it felt like every delegate was drowning in a mixture of guilt, awe, and fear. Yet behind that fear, something new flickered, respect, the kind that had been buried under centuries of lies and political pride, now rising like an old flame the galaxy had forgotten how to feel. The speaker slowly lifted his head from the floor, eyes red, voice barely more than a broken whisper as he said, If you want us to stand with you, then we will stand. But tell us what comes next, tell us what we must prepare for. And the lead human looked at him with a sigh that seemed to carry the exhaustion of lifetimes, his eyes holding the weight of someone who had watched too many worlds burn and too many stars fall silent. What comes next, the Terran said softly, is not a war you understand. It is not a war you can prepare for with fleets or armies or treaties. He lifted his gaze to the ceiling where the faint tremor of the massive Terran ship above could be felt like a distant heartbeat. What comes is older than your council, older than humanity, older than the galaxy itself. A tremor ran through every delegate as the screens lit again, showing dark shapes drifting through the void, vast, ancient, indescribable, their movements twisting space like fabric stretched too thin. We call them the Silence, the human whispered. Because when they arrive, every star they touch stops singing. The chamber froze. Some delegates pressed their hands to their chests as if their hearts had stopped beating. Others recoiled in horror. They do not conquer, he continued. They consume. They erase. They devour reality itself. The third Terran stepped forward, voice low and filled with the kind of sadness that came from seeing too much. We fought them alone, he said. And we held them back, for a time. A visible shiver passed through the room. But the silence is learning, he added quietly. It is adapting. It is coming closer every century. The delegates trembled, some gripping their seats, others trying not to scream. And your vote, the Terran said, his voice darkening, told them something dangerous. The lights dimmed as if responding to the truth. It told them humanity is no longer trusted. The chamber gasped, realizing suddenly what the humans had been hinting all along. It told them we are divided, he said. It told them the shield they fear might finally be weak. Every breath in the room turned cold. That, the human said softly, is why we could not ignore your vote. He took another step toward the delegates, and even though his face showed kindness, his presence felt like a storm waiting behind closed doors. If the silence believes humanity is alone, his voice dropped lower. They will tear open the sky. A quiet whimper escaped several delegates. But listen carefully, he continued, leaning closer, his voice spreading like a steady heartbeat through the chamber. Tonight, by summoning us, you gave us something we lost long ago. The speaker blinked, confused. What did we give you? The human smiled, not with pride, not with power, but with something heartbreaking. A reason to hope. The words hit the room harder than any warning. For 900 years, he said, we believed the galaxy would never stand with us. That our silence was safer than your fear. The Terran's eyes softened as if a wound inside him had finally begun to heal. But tonight, you asked us what you must do. He placed his hand gently on the council table. You asked to stand with us. The chamber felt something shift, something old, something sacred, something the galaxy had lost when humanity withdrew 9 centuries ago. And for the first time since the Terrans entered, the massive ship above hummed with a lower, softer frequency, as if responding to a change in the humans' hearts. The second Terran stepped forward now, her voice trembling with emotion, the pain and hope blending inside her words like two halves of a long-broken promise. You must understand this, she said. Standing with us does not mean following us. Her eyes glimmered. It means learning what we learned. The delegates leaned in. It means being brave when the galaxy trembles. A quiet sob echoed from the back of the room. It means choosing unity, not because you fear humanity, but because humanity never stopped choosing you. The speaker covered his face as tears streamed down. We do not deserve your forgiveness, he whispered. The Terran shook his head gently. We are not here to forgive, he said. Forgiveness is for the past. He pointed at the screens where the darkness of the silence waited like a storm behind a thin wall. We are here for the future. Silence, deep, powerful, reverent, filled the hall as every delegate realized they were standing at the edge of a new era, one where humanity was no longer the myth they feared, but the ally they desperately needed. The next war, the Terran said softly, will decide the fate of every world in this galaxy. His voice lowered to a chilling whisper. And when the sky rips open again, we want you standing beside us, not behind us. His final words carried through the chamber like a prophecy, like a promise, like a final, desperate plea for unity. Because the silence fears only one thing. The room froze. A galaxy that stands with humanity. And with that, every delegate understood the truth that would change their entire civilization. The chamber felt suspended in a moment that did not belong to time, a moment where past mistakes, present fears, and the future of the entire galaxy all balanced on a single fragile breath. And as the three humans stood in the center, their calm presence radiating the strength of 1,000 forgotten battles, every delegate stared at them with a mixture of awe, guilt, and desperate hope, because now, they understood, humanity had not returned to reclaim control. They had returned because the galaxy had reached the edge of something vast, ancient, and deadly, and without unity. Without trust, without humanity's guidance, there would be no future left for anyone. The speaker wiped the tears from his face and slowly rose, his voice quiet, cracking, but filled with a newfound determination as he whispered, If the silence comes, if the darkness returns, then we will not hide behind you again. We will stand with you. The delegates around him nodded, some still trembling, some openly crying, but all of them carrying the same expression. The expression of people who finally saw humanity not as a threat, but as the only light holding the universe together. The lead humans studied their faces, not with pride or arrogance, but with a deep, tired relief, as if this moment was something he had prayed for without ever expecting to receive it. And after a long, heavy silence, he gave a single slow nod, the smallest gesture yet one that felt like the unlocking of a future the galaxy had long feared was impossible. "Then understand this," he said softly. "Standing with us means more than preparing for war." His gaze swept the room. "It means choosing truth over comfort. It means choosing unity over pride. It means choosing courage over fear." A quiet shiver rippled through the delegates. "Because the silence does not fear your fleets," he continued. "It fears your division." The words hit the room like thunder wrapped in quiet wisdom. The youngest delegate, voice trembling, asked, What must we do first?" The human smiled, a tired, gentle smile that carried 9 centuries of sorrow layered with a thin thread of hope. "You must rebuild trust," he said. "Not with us. With each other." His meaning was clear. The galaxy had spent centuries fracturing itself into pieces while believing humans were the danger. Now they realized the truth. Humanity had been the glue holding those pieces together without being seen. "For too long," the Terran continued, "your alliances were built on fear of us. Now they must be built on faith in yourselves." The room grew still. "And faith in us," he added. That final line softened something deep inside the chamber. Something ancient, something almost sacred, like a bond reforged after centuries of silence. The screens behind the humans shifted, showing a hologram of the galaxy, its stars glowing softly, its worlds rotating peacefully, yet around the edges, faint cracks of darkness pulsed like silent warnings. "We will face them," the human said quietly. "All of us. Together." The speaker stepped forward, shaking, overwhelmed, but his voice carried truth instead of fear. "Tell us how to begin," he whispered. The Terran lifted his hand, and the hologram zoomed in on a star cluster at the galaxy's edge where faint distortions rippled like breaths being drawn by something enormous. "We begin," the human said, "with knowledge." He pressed a command, and ancient data, Terran scans, recordings, audio logs of the silence, filled the screens. The delegates flinched but did not look away. "For 900 years, we studied them alone," the human whispered. "Now you will study them with us." A subtle vibration shook the building as the massive Terran ship above shifted position, its dark silhouette rotating like a guardian preparing for a watch that would never end. "We will open our archives," the human continued. "You will open yours." A few delegates gasped. That level of transparency had never existed in the council. "There will be mistakes," the human said. "There will be disagreements. There will be fear." His voice became soft, almost unbearably gentle. "But for the first time in 9 centuries, there will also be us." Those words hit the chamber like the first ray of sunlight after a 1,000-year night. Tears flowed freely now. Trembling hands reached out, not in fear but in respect. And then, something extraordinary happened. Something no historical record had ever expected to witness. One by one, slowly at first but then with growing certainty, every delegate in the chamber rose to their feet. Not as rulers, not as politicians, not as frightened leaders, but as allies, as partners, as a galaxy choosing to stand beside humanity. The Terrans watched them rise with quiet awe. The second human whispered, voice almost breaking, "We never thought we would see this day." The speaker bowed deeply, not in submission, but in honor. "We owe you more than apologies," he said. "We owe you our future." The lead human stepped forward, his presence calm, warm, steady, a contrast to the fear his kind once inspired. "Then let us build that future together," he said. His voice softened to a whisper that carried the weight of a new beginning. This time, with open doors. Outside the chamber, the ancient Terran ship shone softly, its blue lines glowing brighter as if reacting to the energy inside, and for the first time since humanity went silent 900 years ago, its engines hummed not with warning, but with hope. The humans turned to leave, their long shadows stretching behind them like the beginning of a new era, and as they reached the doorway, the lead Terran looked back one last time. His eyes filled with a mixture of grief healed and strength rediscovered. "Remember this," he said quietly. "Humanity does not seek to lead the galaxy." He paused, letting the truth settle. Humanity seeks to save it. And with that final, quiet truth, the humans walked out of the council chamber, leaving behind a galaxy forever changed. A galaxy that finally understood the one truth carved into the heart of every Terran star. When humanity stands alone, the galaxy trembles. But when humanity stands with the galaxy, the darkness trembles instead.